Hi everyone, my name is Enrique and welcome to another review. Once again, reviewing X-Men 97, and today's episode is number 7 called Bright Eyes. Now, if you want to know my thoughts on all the episodes from X-Men 97 thus far, check out my playlist and the previous video in which I talk about Life Death Part 2. But without further ado, let's talk about Bright Eyes. It's basically taking the events of the Genosha genocide that the Wild Sentinel caused and basically see the aftermath. And we see the majority of the X-Men that are still there, like Cyclops, Jean Grey, Wolverine, Morph, Beast, and all the others trying to figure out what to do. Everyone taking in all the destruction and mayhem, seeing all the damage caused by the Wild Sentinel, and we see how it displays. We see how it affects everyone. And we see firsthand how it can be very traumatic for a lot of people. We see the funeral of Gambit, which was very touching, especially considering some of the people that were there, especially the ones from his past life, his friends from the thieves and the assassins as well, that despite the differences, they respected Gambit. Belladonna makes an unspoken cameo, which was wow. Really, they went out of the way to bring back some of the characters from the previous show, so that is really, really good to see. But yeah, and more importantly, we hear Nightcrawler doing the whole ceremony, the funeral in his Catholic robe, in his priest robe, and I really deeply appreciate that from Nightcrawler. I really like Nightcrawler. Not only is he enjoyable as a mutant, but he's also a very Catholic person, and he believes in God and redemption and all that. And honestly, it makes me feel very connected with him. But yeah, basically, as we see the X-Men trying to figure out what is going on, especially after the Genosha genocide, we see Cyclops trying to put the pieces back together, not only for the X-Men in Genosha, but also with his marriage with Jean Grey. Keep in mind, after everything that he has been through, discovering that the Jean that he was with and had a baby with turned out to be a clone named Madeline Pryor. The other Jean doesn't know what to expect. I mean, honestly, it's all complicated. Basically, a comic book, if you ask me. But yeah, this puts Cyclops in a very, very difficult position, but he's still gunning through it and still trying to figure out what to do, especially when they go to Genosha. The one that doesn't seem to be having the best time, or at the very least having some mixed thoughts and some controversial mindsets, like the one from Magneto was right to that the humans are not good, is Beast. Of all people that I didn't expect to hear that from, it is Beast who had an existential crisis thinking about the genocide in Genosha. And honestly, I cannot blame him. It's definitely something that he thought that he will never think in his life. But after everything that you have seen, and after so much time with Magneto, it started to make him connect the pieces, or at the very least make him think of the all the things that he's doing, and that puts him in a very difficult position. The ones that also have to deal with this tragedy are also Jubilee and, of course, Sunspot, which honestly I cannot blame them. They're still young and they still don't know how to take all this destruction in. Thankfully, with this destruction, we see that Sunspot has the enough courage to go and tell his mother that he's a mutant. And this is one of my favorite sequences. Julie is trying to encourage him, or trying to give him advice of how to do it, and then he just blows it out of the water. And that's just hilarious. the mother, by the way, mother Mrs. Da Costa, which is the surname of the Da Costa family, and Sunspot name is Roberto Da Costa, and that means that she's a very wealthy, powerful woman in a family, in a rich family. And judging by her reactions and how she reacts to the news, it's pretty clear that she doesn't like mutants. Even though she accepts her son, she still thinks that mutants are still dangerous or not worth time helping because it could potentially put in jeopardy all her businesses and connections, which is honestly a different level of prejudice. Not the one that just hates for the sake of hate, more for the hate for the sake of fear and dishonor. And more, but this is not so much dishonor, but more scare of being perceived as low class, and even though you're rich, you should not care for the people above underneath you. And yeah, that's the kind of prejudice that a lot of people deal nowadays, and that's something that it's difficult to swallow, but it's definitely something that we have to realize. The prejudice is, it always not just comes from hate, but comes from other parts like fear of privilege, and that's something that people will find obscene in some respects. But yeah, continuing with the story, we also see what is going on with Rogue. After the events, we see that she became a one-woman revenge spree, gunning after the men who were responsible not only for the Genosha destruction, but for the death of Gambit and potentially Magneto. I'm going to get into Magneto a little bit, but yeah, Rogue is not screwing around. She even goes into the desert and going in and destroying tanks and missiles and basically erupting a military base where, believe it or not, General Thunderbolt Ross is there. Now, I don't know if this Ross is from the same one from the original Incredible Hulk cartoon series that it was going around in UPN, but it almost seems so. And he also says a line that it makes me think that he has the Hulk sealed in a bunker. Now we all know that the bunker, the cube, the prison that Thunderbolt Ross has for all the gamma radiated soldiers, or all the villains that he has caught over the years are imprisoned there. But yeah, I almost tend to think, it makes me think back of the original Hulk and how it ended that series, because this is going to be going away from the review, but hear me out. This is something you need to hear. In the Incredible Hulk cartoon series that was going around in UPN, the finale saw Thunderbolt Ross waking up from a coma and basically accepting Bruce as his son-in-law, because remember, the Thunderbolt Ross is the father of Betty Ross, and Betty is dating Bruce Banner, who has the alter ego of the Incredible Hulk. So keep in mind that for years, Ross hated Bruce for being the Hulk and for interrupting his experiments and ruining his life. Basically, that's his words, not mine. He basically blames Bruce for his dishonor as a soldier and as a general, and basically made it his life mission to go after the Hulk and capturing him and using his blood for the gamma research or for weapons, all those things. Just to get back to the way he was, to be a more respected general in the army. In the finale, we saw him waking up, accepting Bruce as his son-in-law, and walking out into the background, basically discussing terms of how they're going to become a family. I almost tend to think that was a trick by Ross, because in this series, in this episode of X-Men, they say that Ross says that he has the Hulk in a bunker, sealed in prison, basically. It almost makes me think what happened in the finale. That Ross basically tricked Bruce and Betty and basically used a plan in order to capture the Hulk in prison. I don't know. It makes me think. It makes me wonder if he actually tricked Bruce and Betty and just imprisoned Bruce in order to prevent the Hulk from getting out and basically going back to the way he was, which was being a general and experimenting on him. We have to see, but I almost tend to think that's what happened. But yeah, going back to the review, Ross gets interrupted by Rogue, and she asks point blank to Ross and to figure out where is Garrett, because it turns out that Henry Garrick has escaped from prison and is somewhere outside of U.S. and no one knows where. So yeah, basically things are going out of control, and we see the destruction of Genosha. Jean realizing through her powers that everybody was afraid when they died, seeing how they died, all the ways that happened when all the rubble crumbled underneath, and all the people who died. It was basically the worst nightmare in mutant history. It was worse than everybody thought, and there are still ones dead and missing. So it makes people realize what's going on. In the side note, one of the few survivors from the mutant massacre in Genosha was Emma Frost, the White Queen. Now, in this episode, we see her being brought out of the rubble, and we see that her powers have evolved. That she has now become pure diamond in her whole body. This is basically showing us the evolution of some of the powers. In this case, from the powers from Emma Frost, and seeing what we saw in the comics and in other forms of media, that she can turn her body into pure diamonds. And that's something that a lot of people are impressed by. But yeah, basically, as things are going out of control, and as we see more rubble going underneath and seeing everyone trying to figure out what's going on, we see a message from none other than the man responsible from the mutant genocide, as well as from the Sentinels, and that is Trask. The scientist and Professor Trask sends a message to the X-Men saying that he had a message, or that he knew what's going on, and the X-Men go to Madripoor, one of the most famous places from the comics, to start asking. So Bolivar Trask knows something about the Sentinels, but it doesn't say why. Last time we saw him, he was being interrupted, or at least confronted, by Mr. Sinister, who knew of this, and he was almost seeing like he has something to do with this. So yeah, as we see those things, we also see Rogue going to Mexico, in which she sees a funeral for the Day of the Dead. Nightcrawler finds her, and as she breaks down, the entire team is finally there to confront her. Oh, I almost forgot. Before that, because oh my god, it's been so while since I saw the episode. Before she goes to Mexico, she actually goes in her mission of revenge. She finds Captain America as well. Captain America is in a facility in Alaska, underneath a bunker, and Cap is trying to talk to her, trying to figure out what's going on. And as she was talking to Cap, and Cap tries to tell her to stop with the whole thing, and tells where Garage is, Rogue throws Captain America's shield so far away, almost all the way to Wakanda. And it almost makes me think if they're going to tease Avengers versus X-Men at some point. I don't know, because This at this point we see so many cameos: Thunderbolt Ross and now Captain America. It also makes me think what happened to Cap, because keep in mind this is also taking place in the same universe as the Spider-Man TV series. I almost tend to think that after the events of Secret Wars, that Madame Web and the Beyonders sent Captain America to Earth instead of being trapped into a pocket universe with the Red Skull. And I don't know. I'm just thinking because this whole thing is from my childhood, and I remember all these things. And now that Captain America is in the same universe as the X-Men, I almost tend to think that he's forming the Avengers alongside Iron Man and the others. So we have to wait and see. But yeah, Rogue goes and finds Garrick in Mexico and absorbs his memories using her powers. And we see some images that we don't see, but eventually, after she stops absorbing the memories, she goes to the funeral of the Day of the Dead in Mexico. She gets confronted or comforted by the X-Men and Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler and Rogue have history. Like I said, they both have a mother in Mystique. Although Rogue is adopted and Nightcrawler is Mystique's biological son. But that's another story. That's for later. But we see what happens to Henry Garrick after the events. After we saw Garrick being absorbed of his memories, we see him being confronted by a mysterious person in which that person manages to activate a radio from a distance, and that makes you wonder who that person is. And as we see this person, we see him kill Henry Garrick in a very, very brutal way. Not in a very gory way, but in a very silent, but also very, very disturbing way. But basically, yeah, as we see the X-Men go into Man Report, all of them are investigating one of the facilities that Bolivar Trask had. And as they go into a secret entrance, they see a bunch of experimental sentinels that look almost humanistic. And as we see, and this is a joke that I actually like from Morph, why don't you ask Oppenheimer over there who's about to jump? Basically, Bolivar is going to jump from a building, and basically it tells the X-Men that it was his fault, that Mr. Sinister and him were creating these things, including the Wild Sentinel, and they were experimenting on something that was going to be very bad for all mutants alike. Rogue tries to get more information out of him, but Bolivar Trask doesn't want to say and doesn't know what to do, and Rogue just straight out drops Bolivar from the building. Basically, Rogue is already in a different level that we never saw before, because if you think that destroying, erupting a military base or throwing away Captain America's shield was not Rogue or the one that we know, then this is definitely it, because she's already upset and angry and she doesn't care anymore. She wants to go after the people responsible for this, and she doesn't care about killing them. She actually goes into the same philosophy as Magneto is, which is destroy everyone, including the ones who are responsible, whether they're mutant or human. But turns out that she didn't kill Bolivar. As we see an explosion attacking Rogue, we see that Bolivar has become some sort of a bio-organic sentinel. Basically, he has become a humanoid version of the Sentinels, attacking all the X-Men. And the X-Men trying to take him down, but it's proven very difficult, as his powers are almost very Sentinel-like, almost seen indestructible, and they can regenerate as well, even if you destroy him. And it almost seems a lose battle for the X-Men, until a grenade enters the picture and disrupts all the technological electricity, including the bio sentinel of Bolivar Trask, knocking him down, and we see the appearance of none other than Cable. Now, remember, Cable appeared in Remember It from episode 5, and he was trying to stop the whole genocide of Genosha. And we see him being confronted by Cyclops and Jean, and they discover the truth that Cable is none other than Nathan Summers, the son of the Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers, Cyclops. So yeah, as both Jean and Scott discover it, he tells the X-Men about the impending doom that they are facing in. And this is basically saying that it's something that is coming for them, and it's not just human, but also very sentinel. It's a hybrid of the two, and it's going to destroy everyone. As we see the X-Men being confronted with this information, we see Mr. Sinister in an island confronting the mastermind behind all this. And this man, for those who don't know, is voiced by Theo James. Now, we have theorized who Theo was going to play in this series because everybody had their own thoughts. I always thought that he was going to be like Deadpool or Captain America, but it turns out that that wasn't the case. In fact, he's playing a villain from the comics that I honestly never thought that I would see, or at the very least never went into the back of my mind. It was never in my head. And that is Bastion, the man who was basically a human sentinel. And that's something that we saw in Bolivar Trask, and now we're seeing him in him. And he not only is the man responsible with the Wild Sentinel, but we also see that he was the man who captured Magneto. And judging by his attitude, he's a cocky son of a bitch and so confident in his plans that he's willing to let Magneto live and use him for God knows. But yeah, basically that's how the episode ends, and towards the 3-part finale of Tolerance is Extinction. The man responsible for this is a man called Bastion, and in the next episodes we're going to see his origin and how he became this powerful villain. So yeah, overall, a lot of things to discuss. There was a ton of cameos from many characters, not only from Captain America and Thunderbolt Ross, but also from the majority of the humans and the mutants as well. From seeing the island, seeing the City of Madripoor, from seeing the majority of the mutants that were in the island. Most of them with unspoken cameos. Some of them did speak. It's so hard to take all this in, but yeah, it's basically seeing that Morph making forms of Quicksilver. It's also a cameo. Wow, it's so many things. But what about the episode as a whole? It's pretty cool, and it's definitely a good appetizer for the finale that we're going to see, as it's going to be a very 3-part explosive finale. So stay tuned for that and my thoughts around it. But yeah, definitely a good episode. It's good to see how the characters are taking in all this depressive talk, how they handle the Genosha massacre, how Cyclops is trying to put the pieces back together with Jean and the X-Men, how Rogue is handling the loss of Gambit, how Nightcrawler is trying to be the voice of reason for the majority of the people, how the majority of the X-Men are handling this situation, and seeing how Roberto and Jubilee are handling all this with the revelation to with Roberto's mom, Mrs. DaCosta, as him being a mutant. There's a lot of things handling. I love how Bolivar is basically the man responsible, not directly, but also being part of the destruction of Genosha, and how these actions basically made him into the new Oppenheimer of the Marvel's animated universe. This is a lot. But yeah, definitely good episode. Good action sequences. The animation always standard. I really, really love the action sequences here. The rogue interruption of the military base, the attack of the X-Men towards the human sentinel of Bolivar Trask, and so many things that you wouldn't notice in the background, but if you watch it a second time, you'll notice more and more. This is definitely a good episode that allows us to understand what is going to happen in the finale. But yeah, good episode. And now we have to figure out what's going to happen. And this is going to be the three-part finale of Tolerance is Extinction. And we're going to see Bastion's plan, how the X-Men rally, and how everything is going to unfold. So yeah, stay tuned for my reviews of those ones. And stay tuned for my review of the new Avengers movie, or the Thunderbolts movie, basically. And I'll see you next time, okay? So I'm being Enrique, and peace.